let's put it in a bit of context. First of all, the anti-mask law, as called, in fact, has been introduced by quite a number of Western countries, including many states in the United States, Canada, and then France, Germany, and Spain, etc. So it's nothing new as far as a lot of Western cities are concerned. But Hong Kong is, of course, very, very different. And it's not meant, as the Carrie Lam, the chief executive, said, it's not intended really to stifle the protests, because the laws at the moment allow peaceful demonstration. That's been going on for the past decades. And in fact, Hong Kong is known as the city of demonstrations. But what the law is intended to do is to deter frontline militants from shielding behind the mask, escape the legal responsibilities for their acts of vandalism and even what may be perceived as terrorism. Because there is also acts of private vigilantism in the streets, targeting people of different opinions, and also vandalizing or setting fire even to private properties. But on the other hand, it's not unlikely to end the protest, because behind the protest is a true groundswell of dissatisfaction and anger against the perceived lack of upward movement for the young people, but more importantly, the perception that one country, two systems has been tilting towards the one country rather than the values enshrined in the two systems. So I think that this groundswell of protest is an act of defiance against what is perceived as the government's crackdown on the protests.
Now, Andrew, obviously it seems to be very difficult to come up with some kind of strategy in all this. So in your opinion, what is the best way to resolve the situation? Obviously, it's affecting the Hong Kong's economy already. We can expect investors to pull out soon too.
Naturally, it's done a tremendous damage to Hong Kong's reputation as a safe city, one of the safest in the world, and affecting a lot of businesses across the board. But if you look at what the protesters are still demanding, showing their hands representing the so-called 5 demands, the first demand, of course, has been met: the withdrawal of the very controversial extradition bill, which was seen as removing the firewall between the jurisdictions in Hong Kong and those on the mainland. But then the remainder of the demands are really not realistic. And I think that some protesters may even realize this, because if you look at it, setting up an independent commission inquiry at a time of escalating evidence would only serve to give a safe haven for some of the rioters to turn over themselves after the riot acts have been committed, so that their acts could escape justice, because any evidence tendered at the so-called independent commission inquiry would exempt them from legal responsibilities. Now, if you look at the other demands, setting free all the arrested rioters, there's about 2,000 of them, and some of them have been charged or have been arrested for frequent acts of violence and vandalism and so on and so forth. Well, that's simply not realistic. And also, dropping the charge of riots altogether would combine to weaken the law and order against these rising threats of violence. Now, the most important demand, of course, is universal suffrage. But what the protesters are demanding is to scrap the constitution of Hong Kong's one country, two systems, which, because Hong Kong is not a country and it's very, very unique, there are safeguards for Beijing.
Yes.
And these safeguards to ensure that anyone selected, cannot be someone who is likely to push Hong Kong towards independence.
Okay, Andrew, while we are talking and while you were talking, we are receiving these live pictures coming from Hong Kong, another day of protests. And as we were mentioning there, we've seen violence increasing over the past few weeks. So now, again, a new protest today. We can expect more violence, perhaps. So where does it all end, and how is this going to stop?
Well, of course, if Hong Kong is allowed to burn, Of course, Beijing would not sit on its hands. And then there could be more even draconian measures, because behind the anti-mask law is this emergency a law, which of course has been gathering dust on Hong Kong statute books. But under that law, any laws against to restore law and order and to prevent the city descending into anarchy can be enacted. But I don't think that we'll come to that, because at the end of the day, a lot of the ordinary citizens are seeing that their daily lives have been completely disrupted, even though some of them have sympathies with the protest movement. Increasingly more of them would go against this continuing acts of violence and lawlessness. I mean, even last evening, there were seen that some of the rioters are stopping cars, setting up their own roadblocks to check whether there are policemen after duty, so that they can beat them up. And even there was an incident of the rioters throwing a petrol bomb at a policeman with the intention of killing him. So I think that more and more people are likely to denounce these acts of violence, and hopefully some sense is restored amongst the rioters as far as the demands are concerned.